My wife confessed, our 3-year-old daughter isn't mine. When I filed for divorce, my mother and sister betrayed me, supported my cheating wife, threatened to disown me, and called me a coward for not forgiving, but I chose my dignity, lost my entire family, and now, they're all begging me to come back. I'm 33 years old. I work in accounting for a mid-sized company, and 6 months ago I discovered that my entire life was basically a lie. I don't know why I'm writing this now. I guess I need to get it out of my system because there are still days when I wake up and can't believe all of this actually happened. The thing is, I was married to Catherine for 7 years, and I thought we had a pretty good life. You know, nothing spectacular but stable. And we had a 3-year-old daughter, Nora, who was literally my entire world. But it turns out Nora isn't my biological daughter, and Catherine hid it from me for 3 full years. 3 years in which I changed diapers and stayed up when she had a fever and planned her future. And all that time she knew the truth and just decided not to tell me anything. Let me go back a bit because this doesn't make sense without context. Catherine and I met when I was 25, and she was 22, at a mutual friend's party, and it was one of those instant connections that people always say don't exist, but sometimes do happen. We got married 2 years later. My mom, Marilyn, was happy because she always wanted me to settle down. My sister Heather was excited too because she got along well with Catherine, and everything seemed to be going perfectly. We both worked a lot, me at my accounting office and her as a manager at a clothing store, and after a few years of marriage, we decided we wanted to have kids. Catherine got pregnant when we'd been married for about 4 years, and I was over the moon. Literally, it was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. The pregnancy was normal. I went to all the medical appointments I could. We bought all the little clothes and furniture for the baby's room. And when Nora was born, I felt like my life had complete meaning. You know what I mean? Like everything I'd worked for and lived for had been to get to that moment. The first 3 years were intense, but incredible. I mean, Nora was a super active and alert child, and I adored every second with her, even the sleepless nights and the tantrums at the supermarket. Catherine and I had our ups and downs like any couple, especially after having a baby because that changes everything. But I thought we were a solid team. There was a period like when Nora was 6 months old that Catherine was weird, like distant and emotionally absent. And I mentioned it to her several times, but she said she was just tired from work and taking care of the baby, and I believed her because it made sense, right? Now looking back, I realized there were signs everywhere, like she avoided certain conversation topics or got nervous when I casually looked at her phone. But at that moment, I was so inside my happy bubble that I didn't see anything. The bomb exploded 6 months ago, on a Sunday afternoon when we were supposed to go to the park with Nora. I was preparing the bag with toys and snacks when Catherine told me she needed to talk to me about something important. She sat on the couch with her hands shaking and her face pale, and I thought maybe she'd lost her job or something. I don't know. Something bad, but manageable. But what she told me was, I need to confess something I should have told you a long time ago. And I sat down because her tone scared me. And then she dropped it all on me at once, that she'd had an affair 3 years ago, that it had been with a guy named Gabriel who worked at her store, that it lasted like 4 months, and that when she got pregnant, she wasn't sure who the father was, but decided not to tell me anything and assume it was mine. But it turns out she always had doubts. And a few months ago, she secretly did a paternity test. You don't even know how she got my DNA without me realizing, and confirmed that Nora isn't biologically mine. I sat there trying to process what I'd just heard, and it was like my brain had completely disconnected. I asked her why she was telling me now, 3 years later, and she started crying, saying the guilt was killing her, that she couldn't keep lying to me, that she needed to be honest with me. And I could only think, really? Now you decide to be honest? After 3 years of lies? I asked her about Gabriel, and she told me he left her when he found out about the pregnancy. Literally disappeared, and she never heard from him again. And that's why she decided to stay with me and pretend everything was fine. I felt like I'd been hollowed out inside. Like every memory of the last 3 years had transformed into something false and rotten. Nora was in her room playing, oblivious that her world was also about to be destroyed, and I couldn't even look at her without feeling this physical pain in my chest. I don't remember exactly what else we said in that conversation because everything is blurry, but I do remember that at some point I got up, grabbed my backpack, threw in some clothes and my documents, and left the house. Catherine kept yelling after me that she was sorry, that she loved me, that we could get through this, but I needed to get out of there before I did or said something I'd regret. I went to a hotel that was like 20 minutes from the house, one of those generic chain hotels with no personality, but at that moment, it was exactly what I needed. A place where nobody knew me, and I could process all this in peace. I blocked Catherine's number because I couldn't deal with her messages and calls. I needed space to think, without her trying to manipulate me with her apologies. The next few days were a total blur. Like, I don't even know how I spent that time. I called my boss and told him I needed to take a month of vacation for a family emergency, and luckily he was understanding and gave it to me without asking many questions. I also contacted a lawyer, Ms. Reynolds, and explained the situation to her, and she told me we could start the divorce process immediately, and that given that Nora wasn't biologically mine, I wouldn't have any support, obligations, or anything. That should have given me relief, but it just made me feel worse, like I was abandoning a child who until a few days ago had been my daughter. But what other option did I have? I couldn't stay in that marriage after such a betrayal. I just couldn't. A week after I left, my mom called me. By that point, Catherine had contacted her and told her her version of events, probably painting herself as the repentant victim. My mom started lecturing me about how marriage requires work, that everyone makes mistakes, that Nora needed me regardless of biology, and that I was being selfish and cruel by abandoning my family. I tried to explain to her that it wasn't just that Catherine had made a mistake, it was that she'd lied to me for 3 years about something fundamental, but she didn't want to listen. She told me she was disappointed in me, that she'd raised a better man than this, and that I needed to reconsider my priorities. That conversation destroyed me as much as Catherine's confession, because my mom had always been my person, the one who supported me unconditionally, and now she was taking my unfaithful wife's side. My sister Heather also got involved in the matter, calling me like 2 days after Mom. Heather is 30 years old, she's a teacher, and has always been very traditional in her values, and she basically repeated everything Mom had said but with more intensity. She told me that Nora saw me as her dad, and that I couldn't just disappear from her life, that it would traumatize her forever, and that Catherine had made a mistake but was repentant and deserved a second chance. I asked her if she would stay with a husband who did the same thing to her, and she was quiet for a moment before saying that wasn't the point. That my situation was different because there was a child involved. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, as if having a daughter in the mix obligated me to swallow all this shit and pretend nothing had happened. The calls and messages from Mom and Heather intensified over the following weeks. Mom got to the point of threatening me that if I went ahead with the divorce, she would disinherit me and stop considering me her son. She literally told me that, and I was processing how my own mother could prioritize someone else's marriage over her son's emotional well-being. Heather was equally brutal, telling me I was a coward, that I was destroying a family out of pride, and that someday I was going to regret this decision when I was old and alone. Those words hurt me more than I want to admit, but they also made me realize that my family wasn't supporting me in the most difficult moment of my life, and that showed me who was really on my side. Luckily, I had my best friend Peter, who's been my friend since high school and has always been like a brother to me. When I told him everything that had happened, he immediately offered for me to stay at his place. He lives alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, like an hour from where I lived with Catherine. I moved in with him after 2 weeks at the hotel because honestly, I couldn't keep paying for the room and I didn't want to go back to my house either. Peter was incredible. He gave me my space when I needed it, but was also there to listen when I needed to vent, and he never judged me or pressured me to make any specific decision. He just told me, do whatever's best for you, not for your mom or Catherine or anyone else, and that was exactly what I needed to hear. Catherine received the divorce papers about 3 weeks into all this mess, and apparently she became hysterical. My lawyer told me that her lawyer called saying Catherine was devastated and wanted to meet with me to talk, that there were things she needed to explain to me. I told Ms. Reynolds I wasn't interested in talking to Catherine, that everything that needed to be said could be said through the lawyers, but she recommended I consider at least one meeting to close that chapter, that sometimes having that conversation helps with the healing process. I don't know why I listened to her. I guess part of me still needed answers that only Catherine could give me. After Catherine received the papers, the pressure from my family became unbearable. Mom called me every day, sometimes several times a day, leaving me voicemails where she cried and begged me to reconsider, that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Heather did the same, and in some messages she got furious, telling me I was selfish and a bad father, and in others she got sentimental, reminding me of moments from when Nora was a baby and how happy I looked. It was pure manipulation, and I knew it, but that didn't make it hurt less. There was one particular moment where Mom sent me photos of Nora asking for me, telling me the child didn't understand why her daddy had abandoned her, and that almost broke me. But Peter reminded me that I hadn't abandoned anyone, that Catherine was the one who had destroyed our family with her decisions, and that I couldn't let guilt force me back into a toxic situation. I finally agreed to meet with Catherine about a month and a half after everything, at a neutral cafe that was halfway between where I was staying and our old house. I arrived first and waited for her at a table in the back, and when she came in she looked terrible, like she'd lost weight and had huge dark circles under her eyes, and for a second I felt sorry for her before remembering why we were there. She sat across from me and immediately started crying, telling me how sorry she was, that it had been the worst mistake of her life, that she loved me and loved the family we'd built. I just let her talk without interrupting because I needed her to get it out so I could ask my questions. When she finally calmed down a bit, I asked her the only thing that really mattered to me. Why? Why did she have the affair? And why did she choose to lie to me for 3 years instead of telling me the truth when she got pregnant? Her answer was basically that Gabriel was exciting and new, that our relationship had become routine, and she felt attracted to the attention he gave her. She told me that when she got pregnant, she panicked, that Gabriel disappeared, and she didn't want to lose me too, so she decided to bet that the baby was mine and never say anything. I asked her how she could live with that lie, how she could look me in the eye every day knowing what she knew, and she just said that at first it was difficult, but over time she convinced herself that what I didn't know wouldn't hurt me, and that as long as I was happy being Nora's father, biology didn't matter. I told her that was a selfish rationalization, that she'd robbed me of the right to make my own decisions about my life, and that she'd built our entire family on a lie. She tried to grab my hand across the table, but I pulled it away, and I told her there was nothing she could say or do to fix this, that I was too broken. Catherine begged me to at least maintain a relationship with Nora, that I didn't have to be with her, but that the child needed me. And that part destroyed me because I missed Nora too. Every day since I left, I'd thought about her laughter and her hugs and how she said daddy with that squeaky voice 3-year-olds have. But I explained to her that I couldn't, that every time I saw Nora, I'd see the lie, I'd see the betrayal, and that wasn't fair to me or to her, that I needed to cut off all contact to be able to heal, and that maybe in the future, when I processed all this, I could consider some kind of relationship with her, but I couldn't promise anything. Catherine became hysterical, saying I was taking away from her daughter the only father she'd ever known, and I responded that she had made that decision when she decided to cheat on me, not me. I got up from the table and left without looking back, and that was the last time. I spoke directly to her. The divorce process continued through the lawyers. It was relatively quick because there were no significant shared assets beyond the house, which went to Catherine because technically I didn't live there anymore and she needed a stable place for Nora. I didn't fight for anything. Honestly, I just wanted it all to be over as quickly as possible. MS Reynolds handled everything efficiently, and after about 3 months, the divorce was finalized. The day I signed the final papers, I felt empty, like hollow inside, because I was officially closing that chapter of my life but had no idea what came next. Mom followed through on her threat and effectively stopped talking to me. She sent me one last message saying I'd chosen my pride over my family, and that when I decided to mature and do the right thing, she'd be willing to reconsider our relationship, but until then she didn't want to know anything about me. Heather was a bit less dramatic, but still ended up cutting contact, saying it hurt too much to watch how I was destroying my life and that she needed to distance herself until I came to my senses. Losing my mom and sister at the same time, I lost my wife and daughter was brutal. I'm not going to lie. There were nights where I stayed awake, wondering if I was really doing the right thing or if everyone else was right, and I was being a selfish idiot. But Peter was still there, and little by little I started rebuilding myself. I went back to work after my month off, and focusing on the daily routine helped me keep my sanity. My coworkers knew something had happened because I clearly wasn't the same. But they were respectful and didn't ask invasive questions, and I appreciated that. I threw myself into new projects at the office, worked long hours because being busy prevented me from thinking too much, and slowly I started feeling a bit more like myself, or at least like a new version of me that I was still discovering. About 4 months after everything, I decided I needed a more drastic change. Continuing to live in the same city where I'd built my entire life with Catherine was killing me. Every place had memories. Every corner reminded me of something. So I started looking for jobs in other cities, small places where I could start over without the weight of my past. I found a position at an accounting firm in a town like 3 hours from where I lived, a much smaller and quieter place. I told Peter I was going to move, and he supported me completely, although I know it hurt him because we were practically family at that point. He helped me pack my few things and drove me to my new apartment, and when we said goodbye, he told me he'd always be there for me, no matter the distance. I moved to this new town 2 months ago, and honestly, it's been good for me. It's slower, simpler, people are friendly but not invasive, and I've been able to build a routine that feels healthy. I started going to the gym regularly, something I've never done before, and exercise helps me channel all the anger and sadness I still carry. I also joined a local book club because I needed to meet new people and make friends outside of work, and although at first it was weird, I already feel more comfortable and I've made a couple of acquaintances who could become real friends. There are still bad days where I think about Nora and wonder how she is. If she misses me, if Catherine has explained anything to her, or if she just told her that Daddy left. Those thoughts kill me, but I'm learning to live with them, to accept that some things I'll never be able to completely resolve. I also think about Mom and Heather sometimes. I wonder if they'll ever understand why I did what I did, or if we're going to be distant forever. It's painful to have lost practically my entire family in one blow, but I also realize that if my family only supported me when I did what they wanted, then maybe it wasn't the kind of support I needed in my life. The divorce was finalized like a month ago, officially. Catherine tried to contact me a couple of times after the signing, text messages that I left unread, and eventually she stopped trying. I don't know anything about her life now or about Nora's life, and although it hurts, I think it's better this way. Gabriel never showed up. From what I understood, he literally disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy, and Catherine never heard from him again. So Nora basically doesn't have a biological father in her life, and that makes me feel guilty but also reminds me that it's not my responsibility to fix the mess Catherine created. I'm in therapy now, something I should have started months ago but finally began a few weeks ago. My therapist says I'm processing multiple traumas: Catherine's betrayal, losing Nora, my family's rejection, and that it's going to take time to heal from all that. She tells me I'm doing well, that establishing boundaries and moving away from the situations was the right thing, but that I also need to allow myself to feel grief for everything I lost. And she's right, I guess, because there are still moments where everything overwhelms me, and I need to just sit and let the pain go through me. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, if someday I'll be able to forgive Catherine, or if I'll reconcile with my mom and Heather, or if I'll have some kind of relationship with Nora when she's older and can understand what happened. For now, I'm focused on myself, on healing, on building a new life in this town where nobody knows my story and I can just be Lawrence, the new accountant who goes to the gym and book club. It's a simple and quiet life, nothing spectacular, but it's mine and it's built on truths, not on lies, and that has to count for something. Last week, I was walking through the town park, and I saw a girl about 3 or 4 years old, playing with her dad, and for a moment my chest hurt thinking about Nora. But then I took a deep breath and kept walking, because that's how it works now. I feel the pain. I acknowledge it, and I let it go. I don't know if that's healing or just surviving, but it's the best I can do for now.